Hello everybody and welcome to Constellation Road. We are out just outside of Wickenburg for another ride today. The plan is to head east into the higher elevation of the Wickenburg Mountains on a bit of a reconnaissance mission. We'll be checking out Buckhorn Road and heading up Castle Creek in the direction of Copperopolis. And while we likely won't make it all the way to the old copper camp today, we want to see what condition those trails are in. This past winter has been particularly wet, and as a result, a lot of washes and trails have changed since the last time we rode them. Either way, the day should be full of some great views, rocky trails, and even some water, which should make for a great day in the desert. Now before we get underway real quick, I just wanted to let you know that this trip was filmed the morning before the stay-at-home order was issued here in Arizona. This was our way of practicing social distancing, but even just a couple weeks ago, things were a little bit different. While I don't think you should completely cut off your desert time, you should use extra caution and stay in areas closer to home during this very strange time. With that being said, hopefully you enjoy the scenery today from home or wherever you're at, and like all of you, I am patiently waiting for things to clear up and get back to normal. So our ride today begins just a couple miles northeast of Wickenburg along Constellation Road. After a little bit later than normal start to the day, thanks to a dead battery on my quad, we eventually made it to our staging area and began to get things ready. This is a pretty popular area, so expect a lot of other riders and RVs parked along the trail. Today's ride would be a pretty good mix of hard-packed dirt roads and several miles of washboard roads and washes, so we aired the tires down a little bit extra. Once things were fueled and loaded up, we were ready to set out. From our staging area, we headed northeast along Constellation Road. The first few miles were extremely fast-moving and easy. Just a few minutes later, we split off to the right and followed Buckhorn Road east. Constellation Road does continue to the north here and heads for the Monte Cristo mine, which can be accessed on some pretty easy trails. On Buckhorn Road, things were up and down as we headed deeper into the Wickenburg Mountains. In the wash, the trail had a few wet spots, which would be an indicator of how the rest of the day would go. Things twisted and turned and remained quite scenic as we climbed to a high point a little over 4,200 feet up. Here, it was less traditional desert landscape and more low elevation forest. After a little while, we came across our first rattlesnake of the day. Laying out near the edge of the trail, this one was a reminder that the weather was beginning to warm up, and we would end up seeing several throughout the day. Be sure to keep an eye and an ear out for these guys when you're out on the trail or hiking around, especially at this time of year. You certainly don't want to find one by accident. A little ways down the road, we arrived at a trail junction. Here, a lesser road splits off and climbs north. This has always been the way to Copperopolis that we've taken in the past. That trail is rather long and slow going. Last time we went out, we took this way and climbed down the big hill, passed by Wickenburg's grave, and returned via Buckhorn Road, which at the time was in pretty good shape. That is why today we are continuing east from this point to see how that way to Copperopolis looks. The road remained easy and dropped past several private mining claims and residences along the road. Just after the 12-mile mark, the road dropped into Buckhorn Creek, which it would follow for several miles to the east. While things weren't overly difficult, it certainly was a bit rougher. The trail was full of countless washboards, and in many places, water remained on the road. It last rained in this area about a week or two ago, and the reshuffled rock in the creek bed showed that this area has seen a good amount of flowing water. It was slow and go for a while as we bounced over the bumpy terrain. I know the camera stabilization might tell you otherwise, but it was rough as the miles ticked on. The scenery, however, was really fantastic along this section. The towering cliffs on either side provided a stunning contrast to the creek bottom below. The flowing water that remained was also a nice change of pace. It's pretty rare when we get to splash through water here on these desert trails. After over 7 miles in the wash and several water crossings later, we eventually made a sharp left at a ranch and climbed north on the smoother trail. This section provided a much needed break and some more stunning terrain. After crossing a cattle guard, the trail dropped towards the next wash, which was Castle Creek. After a pretty nice drop, we soon arrived in the sandy wash, which was still flowing with a decent amount of water. We crossed through and turned left to head north up Castle Creek. Staying to the right here will take you down to Castle Hot Springs and eventually to Lake Pleasant, where the wash drains into. We turned north to head up Castle Creek towards Copperopolis. Almost immediately we passed through a gate. From here, the trail deteriorated in the creek bed. Some sections remained well defined, while others remained hard to follow and strewn with rocks and debris. It is clear that this area has changed over the last several months of rain and weather. In fact, looking at satellite images from this area showed just how much the conditions can vary over time. We wound across the creek numerous times as we proceeded upstream. The water wasn't particularly deep in this area, however, it did make it more challenging to find the right line. The surrounding terrain, however, was once again spectacular. The rock walls ranged from red to gray to white, and the banks were filled with some fresh green vegetation. After about a mile in the creek bed, we came to a boulder-strewn section and stopped for a break. It was clear that things wouldn't be getting any easier. The boulders in the creek here showed signs of flash flood debris. While it wasn't impassable by any means, we were now about 20 miles from our trailer, and my dad was pretty tired of all the bumps we had encountered thus far. With the water still flowing and the creek bed rearranged, it wouldn't make much sense to keep going. Copperopolis was still over 5 miles away, and from an aerial look, it didn't seem like conditions would seriously improve anytime soon. In fact, the next several miles ahead had narrower sections and more water on the trail. The cool, trickling water provided a nice relaxing break, and it's a bummer we didn't bring a gold pan along with us. And with that, I'm going to shut up for a little bit and let you enjoy a minute or two of the natural beauty before we turn around and head back the way we came. After enjoying the serene view for a while, it was around 1 p.m. when we decided to turn back and begin on the 20-mile trek back. It seems like maybe we should have just stuck to the original way to get to Copperopolis. Either way, it was good intel for another potential trip out here sometime. We now know that this way was a little more difficult than the last time we've been out, and once the stream dries up, it would probably be a little bit easier. We crawled back downstream, following the creek through the numerous water crossings. This section was pretty fun. We passed back through the gate and crossed Castle Creek one last time before following Buckhorn Road back west. The trail climbed before ending up back in the wash bottom for several miles. We came across some more animals along the trail, which included a massive bull and another rattlesnake, before returning to the hard-packed road through the Wickenburg Mountains. The miles slowly got quicker and easier, and we eventually made our way back to Constellation Road. After a 40-mile day on the trail, we soon arrived back at the staging area. While the day hadn't been a huge success, it was just great to get out and enjoy some beautiful scenery and time away from it all. Plus, we now had a good idea on current trail conditions in the area. We loaded up the ATVs, and by about 3:30, we were on our way back home. Thanks for tagging along on the adventure today. Hopefully you were able to enjoy a little bit of time away from the hustle and bustle, and as always, we'll see you on the next one.